Thank you so much for staying with us, everyone. Let's move on to perhaps one of the most talked about story of the week. That is a judgment of the court on the Presidential Elections Petitions Tribunal, where the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal dismissed the petition filed by the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, challenging the victory of President Buhari at the February 23, 2019 elections. Justice Muhammad Garba-led tribunal unanimously dismissed the case for lacking in merit after resolving all the 5 issues raised in the case against the petitioners. Justice Garba, who read the leaked judgment, held that none of the grounds upon which the petition was anchored was proved. After the judgment on that day, the PDP appears unsatisfied by the outcome. Take a listen to what Chief Uche Secondus, the chairman of the PDP, said immediately after the end of the proceeding at the court.
Our legal team will study it and then we'll come out with official statement.
That was the immediate response. But the APC thinks otherwise. Here is what Mr. Sowunmi thinks immediately after that judgment was delivered.
Court have settled each of those issues, namely that he didn't lie on oath, 2, that he went to secondary school, and I'm afraid that his name is what it is. He didn't lie over his name, and he has no reason to lie over his name. So his personal integrity has again been reaffirmed by the Court of Appeal.
What is next for the PDP? One of the lawyers insists they will pursue the case further by appealing the judgment. Here is Mr. Ozakome.
There's no question about that we are appealing this judgment. A lot of things are wrong with it. Poor evaluation of evidence, non-evaluation of evidence. There is so much to appeal against.
Well, that is the stance of the PDP, that they are going to appeal this case. But that move by the PDP perhaps was laughable for the APC, because look at what Mr. Adams Oshiomhole had to say in response. After meeting with President Buhari at the villa, the party thinks no matter where the PDP goes with the appeal, according to Mr. Oshiomhole, he said even if you go to the World Court, if there is anything like that ever, that they're still going to defeat the PDP. Take a listen to him.
We are confident. President Buhari is ready to meet defeated Atiku Abubakar at the Supreme Court, and the All Progressive Congress is ready to meet PDP at the Appeal Court, and Adams Oshiomhole is ready to meet my brother Secondus at the Appeal Court. And he will take second, and I will take first.
Well, there is a bit of a confidence in Mr. Oshiomhole. So let's discuss and dissect some of what has transpired and what happened. I have joining me from our Abuja studio, my partner tonight on the program, the spokesperson of the PDP Presidential Campaign Organization, Mr. Sowunmi, and beside him is a chieftain of the APC, Mr. Cletus Obun, and a former lawmaker. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. Let me perhaps begin with Mr. Sowunmi with what we've seen so far. Mr. Sowunmi, the APC believe that if your party goes on to appeal this case, they will still defeat you. That is the kind of confidence coming out from the APC. But we've not heard from your candidate, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, since this happened. There's no official statement from his office about what he wants to do. What is the stance of Mr. Atiku Abubakar on this?
Well, Seun, thank you very much. I think it's important that I try and explain who Atiku is a little bit so that the audience can understand what kind of things move in. I think Atiku understands that his role for Nigeria, in Nigeria, around democracy, is to always be, first and foremost, a Nigerian statesman. And over the years, he has always used his attitude, his conduct, even when he goes to court, to further the interest of all Nigerians and the political class. I'll give you one before I go to why he has not answered. He has not said anything yet. Everybody who is playing politics in Nigeria today, after 2005, 6, 7, must thank Atiku Abubakar that you are no longer going to be able to be zoomed out of election by a panel set up by government. For instance, that the local government chairman can set up a panel, and based on that, you'll be out. The state can do the same. The presidency can do the same. Now, for those who are political or interested in politics, the import of that is that suddenly people can present themselves for election because Atiku went to court when that issue requires determination way back then, when he was with President Obasanjo. And the Supreme Court at that time insisted that the business of elections and all of that, the parties must be immune, except in criminal conviction cases, from frivolous panels. I tell you this to set you a background of who Atiku is. The second thing I want to say is that Atiku is very, very measured. He tries as much as possible not to say things that the society will just start to misbehave and people will start to know. Rather than that, he will hold it all in. He will calmly review the issue, and every time he has had to speak, he had been conscious of the fact that the absolute corporate existence, peace, security, and democracy in Nigeria must be furthered by everybody, no matter what his personal views are. So at the right time, I'm sure he's going to give a comment. But to speak on his behalf in my capacity as a spokesperson, especially for his presidential campaign, the lawyers have now gotten clean copies of that judgment. And I can say authoritatively that they have started to put together their point of law reasons why they disagree, and they will file within the time allowed at the Supreme Court. And I believe that once they file, proper public comment, information will be provided, and it will be in the public domain that having received the judgment, having read it, the main judgment that took about, had about almost 300 pages, 295 pages, and then the two alternative judgments who were also trying to support the main judgment, 25, 26 pages. Of course, there is quite a lot to go to the Supreme Court for. Now, if you opened by saying they were very confident, His Excellency Adam Shomole spoke and all that, I think the only person that has spoken in APC, less one is just bitter and unable to see them or hear them, that has spoken with the decorum required of being a player in the democratic space, in fairness, is Ashaju Tinubu. I've read most of their comments. I've listened to most of their leaders, start from Lai Mohammed down. It's only Bola Tinubu's comment that I think has been measured and placed appropriately, even though obviously he too was celebrating the victory. What I want to say is this. For us in our camp and for Atiku Abubakar, we went to court for all the right reasons. But even more than going to court for the right reasons, we are absolutely responsible to the point that we do not desire anything that will be unpresidential. We do not desire anybody to take advantage of the mood and start to do crisis. We do not desire anything that represents all of us as Nigerians in the bad light. And our issues around the court issues, when we get into it, we'll start to delve into them. But to say firmly, we reject it. We're not satisfied with it. We consider it plural. We consider it not well considered. We consider it a ridiculous meandering by the court to do the bidding of the APC and their presidential candidate. But the place to put our issues and our reasons and our point of law issues will be at the Supreme Court. And by the grace of God Almighty, we will go there, knowing fully well that we believe, and we believe strongly too, that there's a need for the law to be settled on a lot of point of law issues. So that at least for whatever is worth, we can all say, we know this is the law now. You no longer need a certificate to do anything in Nigeria. An affidavit or a picture from your school will suffice. That needs to be tested.
Mr. Obun, if you react to what Mr. Sowunmi has said, what would be your reaction, especially coming from your party, the kind of confidence that came from your party, and the fact that he does believe that some of the things that have come from your party are less than democratic? How would you react to those?
when you say the things that come from our party are less than democratic, you need to expatiate and adumbrate on that. Beyond that, I want to agree completely that anybody playing this game, the political game, in our own climb must do so to the best interest of furthering the political space and the democratic principles for which our country in the last 16, 20 years have had to demonstrate by a continuous, uninterrupted handover of civilian to civilian. It's unprecedented in our country. And I'm not sure that one of the persons who enunciated that was Atiku Abubakar. On the contrary, Atiku Abubakar was rather demonstrating that within the word impunity has almost completely been delisted from our political lexicon in the last 16 years, after the attempt by Obasanjo to promote it into national dictionary of our country. Today, to the extent that Atiku resisted internal impunity in PDP, I concede that to him, that he was able to demonstrate that the executive powers conferred on the president does not include the undemocratic removal of his deputies or any other officer for that matter. To that extent, I concede it to Atiku Abubakar. To the extent that the democratic space has been tested by our jurisprudence, please, you will concede that for a man who had contested election 3 times and gone to court, for a military officer who rose to the rank of a major general and became a head of state, was a governor, a military secretary, and all that, to be sufficiently comported to a point where, if you remember, at a point he was even physically attacked in Kaduna, and nothing happened. But when there was the hist, which even priests, even international observers call a hist, a pogrom, a near pogrom in our country in 2003, when Obasanjo declared that elections were a do or die matter. It was not AMPP, it was not ACN, it was not CPC that declared that elections is a do or die matter. And of course, there's documented and sufficient evidence to show that we suffered the worst form of democratic protocol. And I concede, by 2007, if you remember, Atiku was contesting under ACN, AC then, as he then was, on the 23rd of December in Lagos at Onikon Stadium, where he contested for the ticket against Bafarawa and others. But let me also make this point, that the confidence that APC exudes is not in the air. I do not know whether we should be mourning that we won an election and won in the tribunal. And of course, like Belgore will say, that this judgment will need to go before God before it can be vitiated or overturned. The Supreme Court of Nigeria is going to rely on the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and for grounding their interpretation on and their delivery of the judgment, the first 2 paragraphs that the judges dwelt upon was that they are going to dwell and use the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended and the amended Electoral Act of Nigeria. That was exactly what they used, and that is what they came up with. Like he said, I agree that we will have to wait for the Supreme Court. I agree that nobody should become so primitive as to take the laws and engage in self-help. All of us have suffered that. As we speak, I insist that Port Harcourt would have gone up in flames. Zamfara would have gone up in flames. Cross River on that same Wednesday would have gone up in flames when, in the same judgment in which parties were asking that they were excluded from elections, one candidate will be said that his votes were not acceptable, but at that point, the same tribunal, sitting in the same place on the same matter with the same records, insists that those people were not even candidates, therefore they had no jurisdiction to decide. Calabar would have gone up in flames. But everybody has now learned over 20 years that the best way to go for our democracy is for us to test the law, our constitution, and be as civil as possible.
Mr. Obun, let me go back to Mr. Sowunmi now. Yeah, let me go back to Mr. Sowunmi. Mr. Sowunmi, there were 5 judges. And of all of the petitions brought before those judges, all of those were struck out. Predominantly, and in fact, some of the APC folks had punctured and said, look, even your star witness and the evidence presented in court fell flat on his face. So the question is, on what grounds are you going to the Supreme Court, and what confidence do you have, Mr. Sowunmi, going to appeal this case?
Let me start with the one that borders on what is the position of the law as decided by Aloma Mukhtar, Justice of the Supreme Court, as she was then called, on what exactly is the burden relative to when one party in a case has produced an accusation in court with the document and evidence, and another party who is supposed to enter a defense on those issues choose not to enter a defense. What Aloma J said is that they can no longer benefit or profit for their lack of providing a defense. That will take care of INEC and co when we get there. The other one that I wanted to expand, see, and explain, without delving too much into the legal things, because that will come in the Supreme Court, is that, you see, there is nowhere the judges, with profound respect to them, could have found the basis by which they said it is not required to produce a certificate or to attach one, or that even your deposition in affidavit is not as relevant as that, insofar as you can find picture. Why do I say this? Section, I think 57 of the Electoral Act was very clear on that, as to concerns things like, I know that's for electronic server, I'll come to that. But the law is very clear that if you look at form CF001, you will see right there in the form that you must attach a certificate. Therefore, for you to say, even if you say it, even if it won't matter, we will get to court and we'll prove that. And let me quote also that even for that matter, this question, I've noticed a lot of social media people, especially APC people, say, oh, the burden of proof, the burden of proof. They are not as informed as they should be. There is something called a negative burden of proof. Yes, the burden of proof is that he who asserts must prove. But when it is to the fact that one is saying what you have said is not true, that burden of proof moves. There are enough Supreme Court rulings on that and pronouncement. The law is settled on that. I believe we'll get to Supreme Court together. Now, the biggest elephant as far as the opinion that, which you have also said, star witness relative to Saba. When we listened through that judgment, it became difficult to understand why we needed to listen through another two sets of opinions, which seem to be saying they are not opposed to the main judgment until we read it. When you read the position of the judgment according to Justice Samuel Okeji, I can't pronounce his name very well, you will notice that he first of all accepted in his argument that it has been proven that there is Saba, only to run back into the conclusion without anybody telling him, without anybody putting cross-petitioning or bringing another issue to say that there is no Saba again. If you go back to the second judge who read his own case as well, you will notice that at one point, if you read the judgment, he first of all alluded to the fact that there was Saba, and then he came back and said there was no Saba and it was not proved. The question you will ask is this: what exactly is the duty of judges when they consider a case? I hold the view that it is not the duty of the judge to now start impugning things on behalf of one of the judex, which either of them did not bring forward in open court. When we had left the court, and over the night I kept thinking, okay, what exactly does this mean? I was worried about basically two things, and then President Buhari, and I'll tell you why. Maybe I better start with President Buhari, why I was worried. You know, for the first time, it dawned on me what he had to endure 3 times in a row, and how uphealing this duty of how do you prove an election is fraud. I am a little bit unhappy with him that he didn't really use that opportunity to improve the electoral before the election, because the way our electoral process is, imagine when you go to court, you have 119,973 polling units. How do you call witness one polling agent in every polling unit only in the space of about 10 days allowed for you to produce your witnesses? Imagine all of that. So I thought that, this is what this guy went through. Okay, now, fair enough, but we have a duty to improve that. Then the second thing I worried about was that I worried about what I call the doctrine of experience. I had expected, with profound respect, nobody in the PDP in his right senses would have said Buhari is not qualified in all material particulars. That's not the case. That was just the public narrative that was going helter-skelter by everybody weighing in. The case is simply that he told a lie of a fundamental nature. No one will say he is not qualified through other routes. Our take on that matter is that the Electoral Act and the Constitution of Nigeria gives you a couple of ways. It's this or this or this or this or. Linguistically, you are to choose the route you want to follow and follow it fully. Our issue was that we felt that the court started now impugning things that Buhari himself and his lawyer did not try to put. So we're going to test that in court. The third thing I was worried about is that they didn't think that by the doctrine of experience, they needed to rest and improve the law on that matter relative to whether when you say an affidavit, you need to show cause. That's another. The last one was that I was worried that have we become a nation where forum shopping, aligning of all the odds to favor you when you have incumbency power will now be the norm permanently in this country, wherein no one can go to a petroleum tribunal and expect that they will weigh in fairly, truthfully, and honestly, and judge well, and that it will always be, oh, you can never win, oh, you can never win. Okay, people will say Buhari went 3 times, and maybe his case was good in one of those times, maybe 2007. It's a disgrace that we have a court system that will keep pushing this to the future.
Mr. Sowunmi,
so
let's bring Mr. Obun, because you've had your
good.
time. Let's bring in Mr. Obun quickly. Mr. Obun, I'd like you to react to some of the things that Mr. Sowunmi had said. But again, a lot of people are worried, especially when they see the body language of some of your party members, some of them showing confidence that you were going to win at the presidential tribunal. And the president came to say, look, he was under pressure, that in fact he almost went into trauma when the case was going on, the proceeding was going on there. There seems to be some conflicting messages coming from your party. Can you explain that and react also to what Mr. Sowunmi said?
Well, in a game, which politics is, the players are completely different from the fans and supporters. So the main actor in this drama, in this entire game, was the presidential candidate. If you say that even Atiku was not worried or was not shaken, you'll be giving him the properties of a god. And no man who is engaged in this type of combat. Indeed, this president, I insist, in our political history, is the first incumbent president who allows and has given open space to everybody to play his game. Otherwise, you cannot have the president's party not qualified to run an election, even to say they failed, to the point where they even won an election, and we are taken out of government, as it happened in Zamfara. And today, go and check the records. The president's party has lost in court more than any other party. APC has lost more members, has lost more elections in the court than any other political party in this country today, as we speak. I start with my state. We lost all. 37 candidates, including the governorship candidate. We lost all. In the case of Rivers, they were not even qualified or allowed to contest. In the case of Zamfara, they qualified, got to court, the same court gave them judgment, they went, won the election, the apex court, which they are afraid of going to and claim that it is arranged, again declared as Zamfara, in spite of winning the elections on the field and the people of Zamfara giving them their vote. With a stroke of the pen, the entire APC was wiped out in Zamfara state. As we speak, the minister of Niger Delta lost his election on the day the president was to celebrate in Abuja. So while we were celebrating in Abuja, the states and provinces were weeping and are still weeping till today. As I speak to you, the national chairman of APC is inundated by members, especially those who come from PDP to APC, to say this has never happened, where the sitting government, the sitting party, the government in power, is the one constantly operating from behind the scenes and always coming to complain and becoming complainant in a game in which they should be masters. Now, to get to the point of the precedence about certificate, let me answer to this. That he lied in a fundamental manner. The fundamental as enshrined and is contemplated by the framers of the Constitution is that in lying, that lie aided you to qualify. He has admitted, and several of them have admitted, that on other grounds, Buhari is not just qualified, he's eminently qualified, but that what he said he had, he did not show. The lie must be fundamental to the extent that if that lie was not told, he would not have qualified. That he would have been disqualified on account of that. But because he lied, the INEC was made to believe him and therefore qualified him. That is the fundamentalism of that issue when you say that you lied in a fundamental way. Now, again and again, this matter is not the first time. Oputa, Nikki Toby, several others, Vivor, several cases I have had to take to court up to the Supreme Court up to 2015 as state chairman of ACN, as the main opposition leader in Cross River State. The issue of name, the issue of certificate, is somebody, a man who went to a school. When we went to investigate the school was a girls' school. But what the court held was that the certificate qualified him and those certificates were his own and his name was his own, even when his four names were misplaced in all his certificates. The Supreme Court, we went up to the Supreme Court in a pre-election matter in 2011, up to 2011 for a 2007 election, up to 2011 when we were going for the third election, that matter was still pending. In 2011, the matter we were having in Cross River State pended up to 2015 when we went for the third election, another election. I'm saying that the court have sufficient documentary evidence and decided cases.
All right.
In which the issue of name,
Mr.
the issue
Obun,
of certificate and qualification and disqualification and non-qualification have been decided. And that is why we are confident that our jurisprudence must have to change if the lawmaker, don't even forget.
All right, Mr. Obun, sorry, because of our time, your time is obviously spent. But I need to plead with both of you. I want to get your closing remark on the program. And it's going to be hinged on this. It's just to be in 30 seconds or 40 seconds in the maximum. Kindly, Mr. Sowunmi, you shoot first. The question would be, the APC, the national chairman has said, they will beat your party anywhere you go afterwards. What confidence do you have, just in 30 seconds, to tell Nigerians going forward to the Supreme Court?
Justice will not be considered to have been done in any nation or any clime until those that are not participants in that issue become sufficiently vexed to say that, no, our nation and our judicial system will be independent, will not be castrated, will demonstrate the courage to write judgment that will leave no person in doubt as to his fairness. You see, once we get to the Supreme Court where 7 people will sit on this matter, we will ask them, where did the judges at the Presidential Tribunal get the evidence by which they weighed in on all the documented paper we gave them via the subpoena from INEC?
Mr. Sowunmi, we'll leave it at that and allow Mr. Obun. Mr. Obun, help me. We need to close the program. As it stands right, are you worried going to the Supreme Court about what could happen there at the Apex Court?
I think APC is suffocated, almost asphyxiated with confidence. And I do tell Nigerians that there is nothing to worry about. There must be an end to litigation. And I do think that after that kind of locus classicus, that kind of analytical judgment in which even the academics in law, and even if you take the matter to the Supreme Court of the United States or the world or the Hague, you are still going to get this result. Until maybe we have to get PDP lawyers as judges so that we can now satisfy them. Otherwise, what we have now is near perfect, impregnable, and completely unassailable in law and in fact. Because you can't dump documents and make them dump and expect...
Obviously out of time. But I must sincerely thank my partner tonight on the program, Mr. Cletus Obun, a member of the APC, and Mr. Sowunmi, spokesperson of the PDP Presidential Campaign Organization. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming on to today's show. Well, that's our show tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sowunmi. Bye-bye.